So, talking about Milford Reservoir in Kansas, it's the largest lake in Kansas, very popular, but it's kind of our flagship for blue catfish management in Kansas. Blue catfish are native to Kansas, but in the post-impoundment era, they've been pretty limited in scope. We've stocked them in a few places, have some small populations, but until the Milford population blew up, we had very few angling opportunities for blue catfish. So there was a new effort to establish blue catfish in the lake, some haphazard stocking in the early 90s, basically when we had fish available, a total of about 8 fish per acre. And here's the old gill net data, and the fish showed up in low levels, and then all of a sudden, boom, we had blue catfish everywhere. And those fish were from the 98, 99 year classes, 2 big natural spawns. And then if you look the following few years, the sample abundance falls off. It's not necessarily reflective of the population. That's reflective as we could not sample blue catfish over 400 millimeters in the lake. And just have always struggled to do so. And then you see the population come up again. That's a couple more big year classes that we're able to sample. So going to the sampling history of the lake, we did gill net complements back in the day, switched to core panel nets in 2010. Early 2000s started an electrofishing effort specific to blue catfish. And then in 2018, to try and get our hands on some of those bigger fish that we've struggled to catch in the past, we tried a float line sample or jug fishing. So blue catfish are really getting popular in Kansas, and it's based mostly on the Milford population. So with the success at Milford, we've stocked blue catfish in a lot of the other impoundments in Kansas, and we got some blue catfish populations up and coming. El Dorado Reservoir looks like it's going to be good, but a lot of other reservoirs are struggling. We're not seeing a lot of natural recruitment. So with blue catfish being 6th most popular sport fish in 2013 was pretty noteworthy, especially in the previous survey, they didn't even register. In 2018, we did a creel survey at Milford Reservoir. And so when we asked anglers, what are you fishing for today? We record their answer. And so 45% of them said catfish to some extent. So 34% specifically said blue catfish compared to 1% channel catfish. The other 65% just said catfish. From the fish caught from this creel survey, we had an estimate of over 40,000 caught, 17,000 of which were harvested. And here's some pictures from my favorite blue cat fishing spot that I take people, so we'll move on before you figure out where that's at. So the blue catfish population is getting popular. We're getting national recognition. The Cabela's King Cat tournament came last year, had great success, so they're coming twice this year with their classic there. The recreational component is getting real popular. I grew up close to this lake, and I've been lucky to work around this lake most of my career. And seeing the angler base going from $40,000 walleye boats and $50,000 bass boats, suddenly you see those boats now equipped with rod holders. We are recruiting a lot of anglers that are normally targeted other species that are going after blue cats. And these anglers, of course, we got the normal meat anglers, but a big chunk of our anglers are actually going out and trying to catch these big blue catfish for fun, and then some of them are still harvesting some small fish. But we're already getting a strong proponent of our anglers that are catching these big fish and want to protect those big fish. So we start getting pressure to protect these bigger fish from the public. So these people that go out and catch these big fish, you know, if they see a 40-pound blue cat on the fillet table, they're upset. And they get really upset when they see a truck full of these 20-pound plus fish getting cleaned. So we got a lot of pressure. So here's the history of the regulations of blue cats in Kansas. So back in the day, channel catfish and blue catfish were lumped together. That was due to the low abundance of blue catfish. At Milford in 2009, we split that out in 5 blue catfish and still 10 channel catfish. So we split them out so total harvest anglers could could increase the number of catfish they harvest, but reduce the daily harvest of blue catfish. Eventually, this was adopted statewide. Length regulations. So most of our lakes we're stocking blue catfish in these days. We have a 35-inch minimum length limit on to protect the blue catfish until they get established, reproduce on their own. Milford developed basically without people being aware of it. So they started reproducing and doing well before the angling public got onto it. So there was no history of length regulation there, but to protect these big fish, we implemented this new slot limit starting in 2018. So no harvest of fish from 25 to 40 inches, and you can harvest one fish over 40 inches. Of course, I got to work in the picture of the 50-pounder I caught while wearing a walleye shirt. So the first year of this new length regulation, we had the angler creel data going on. So here's the lake frequency graph. This is in inches of the fish caught by anglers. So you can see, anglers like harvesting, like all the other talks we've heard today about blue catfish, people like harvesting those fish in that range. Of course, nobody catches a 19-inch blue catfish. And then people are still releasing these bigger fish. Only have a few fish being reported as harvested. So we're getting to protect the pressure to protect these fish, but like I said, we struggled to collect these fish in the sampling record. We don't have a great handle of what's going on. In 2018, we really increased our effort, greatly increased our electrofishing effort. We did the float line sample, and part of that we did some fish tagging. So we tagged almost 2,300 fish, and here's a lake frequency graph of the fish we tagged. This is not reflective of the population because we had two different sizes of tags. We used T-tags. We had a smaller tag for fish for 200 to 400 millimeters, and then a bigger tag for fish 400 millimeters and above. And you see there, nobody's picking up all those blue cats. We're just taking pictures because very quickly we ran out of the little tags. And I forgot to mention this graph. So the red is the electrofishing, and then the bluish green there are the ones we collected with jug fishing. So in the history of this lake, we've struggled to collect these bigger blue catfish. And in 2018, we caught some with jug fishing, of course, but we finally were able to get them with electrofishing. And it was pretty much by accident. So the history of the electrofishing there, low frequency electrofishing, we established protocol in the early days. We went out, found where the blue catfish were, and that was our sample location going forward. And we've consistently stayed with these standardized locations. And found out that was probably biasing some of our size. So for this tagging effort, the lake is gridded out. This is 1/3 of the lake for representation there. And we randomly chose grids on where we're going to go electrofish. And then within those grids, we narrowed it down to what we thought was the best habitat characteristic. A brush pile, a drop off, whatever, and then we electrofish that specific location. So, and when we did this, we found those big blue catfish in new areas and areas we were surprised to find. And to put it in perspective, one 5-minute location, we put more blue catfish in the boat than all the previous years of electrofishing. So we really got our hands on some big fish, which was nice. So after we tagged those nearly 2,300 fish, we gave them 2 weeks, settled down, and we went back out for a recapture effort. We had a target of 100 sample sites. We basically ran out of the season with weather and everything else, so we didn't collect as many sites as we wanted. But so here's just the randomized locations throughout the lake, and the number of fish we collected there. So out of all those 83 sites, there was only one location where we did not collect the blue catfish. Here's the lake frequency of the fish from the recapture. So we don't have real small fish here because by this time we're pretty good about eyeballing fish, whether they're 200 millimeters and above. So a few smaller fish there. And then that's all the fish from our recapture event. And we only managed 7 recaptures. So we greatly underestimated the effort. that we thought we would need to be able to get a more robust recapture. So our population estimates are not very tight. Fish over 200 millimeters, 835,000 fish, which comes out to about 53 fish per acre. For fish over that 25 inches, only 12,000 fish, so less than 1 fish per acre. If you have questions on the math, that's our stats guy, Ben Neely. Ask him the questions. So with the tags, of course, we have a phone number. Anglers can report this tag data, so I'm going to go through some of that. Over time, we've had 54 reported tags. So this is whether the fish was harvested or released. The yellow is the harvest, the blue is the release. And see over time, even this fall or late summer, anglers are still catching those tagged fish over a year later. This is based on where the angler caught the fish. So the gray is within the reservoir, the yellow is upstream, the blue is downstream, meaning those fish exited the dam. 2 of these fish were caught 60 river miles upstream of the lake. And then this is the lake frequency of the fish at tagging, so the angler reported harvesting. So you can see those bigger fish, people are still not harvesting them. People are harvesting those fish down below, and we see a couple fish harvested within that slot. Now, that protected slot limit is only in effect within the reservoir, so just because they were harvested in that slot, it could have been upstream or downstream and still been a legal fish. In 2019, we collected some spines and otoliths, get some age structures, and so here's some early work with that. It's looking like, Fisher is taking 10 years to get in that 25-inch protected slot. All right, some more big fish pictures and any questions.
Plenty of time for questions.
I did go through that quick.
Yeah.
So are you, with this last recapture event in 2019, where you only had 7 recaptures, is it the plan to go back out and get after it again to see if you bump up that number?
So that was, we did it over 3 months. We tagged them in 2018, and then we went back just 2 weeks later.
Okay.
Just time for the fish. So yes, we had intents to go back out in 2019, but flooding, I'm sure it's a popular story here, prevented, the lake was 20-some foot high, and we did some electrofishing just to see, and it was real difficult and spotty to find fish. The fish that we collected for the aging were miles upstream of our previous grids.
You said you weren't finding the bigger fish really on through the years, and then all of a sudden you stumble along by accident. Was that a different type of habitat those bigger fish were using?
Yes, so like I said, the early days, those locations where we found the little fish, the population was dominated by little fish. So we found those, and that's where we create our standard sites. And most of those were very close to a river channel, and particularly a bend in the river channel, or where the river channel came close to the bank, and that's where we found the blue catfish in the early days, so that's where our standardized sites. Those bigger fish were not associated with the river channel for the vast majority of the part. A lot of them were in shallow water habitats, on rock structures, humps, old foundations, bridges, some sort of vertical structure, not necessarily, but they were much shallower than the average. When we were finding those little fish, that's 20, 30, 40 foot of water. Those big ones, most of them were in less than 20 foot of water in total depth.
What's your conductivity range in the lake, and what's the size of it?
So the lake is 16,000 acres, 15.7. Conductivity, it ranges, if memory serves me correctly, somewhere between 450 up to 700 microsiemens.
Yeah, did you contemplate knocking out some of those randomly selected grid points due to water depth?
No. It was really amazing doing this. It was eye-opening. So, for example, this location was less than 5 foot of water. We collected 125 fish there, if memory serves me correct. Back in there in the shallow, it was all, the whole area was less than 8 foot. This area was over 50 foot with the same cove arm, very similar, just sheer volume, depth, no habitat, and we collected nearly 50 fish in that location. Basically, anywhere we went, we were collecting blue catfish. Out here in the middle of the lake, there's a submerged island here, so these numbers were really high. Out here, there was virtually no habitat. Like I said, everywhere we went, we collected blue catfish. You know, historically, with our standardized sites, we stuck to the northern half of the reservoir, but with this randomly generated, we went everywhere and found them everywhere.
How large are your blocks?
What's that? 40 acres, that sound right, Ben? 27? 27.
All just with the Smith root, or what were you using?
Yeah, primarily Smith root. We had a Midwest, but we had some technical issues with it that year. But most of it was with an old Smith root, 25-year-old.
Do you notice any difference in time of day, like where your catch rate's higher, maybe in the morning versus the afternoon, or did that vary?
We typically went out with that large of a lake. We were trying to get as low surface activity, low wind as we could, so we tried to get out as early as we could. And I never noticed any difference with time of day. It is weird on this lake in particular, if you're out there first thing in the morning, you'll see those blue catfish surfacing, even out in the 50-foot deep water. So I assume that could benefit our sampling, but I didn't notice a difference.
Any more questions? Thanks, Eli.